Hello, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Happy Hump Day as well. Today, we are doing a webinar called The Romance of Collaboration, Enhancing Business Partnerships with Love's Lessons. It's me and Nick from Partner Portal over here today. We're really excited to be here. One thing that I want to mention as we were putting this webinar together, I love the idea of partnerships in romance or partnerships in your personal life and how that affects or relates to partnerships at work. But I am not a relationship therapist. I have no accolades. I have no, experiences other than my own personal ones and what's worked for me. And Nick's obviously bringing some of his as well. So what we did in this webinar is we went out and we asked a bunch of other successful partnership professionals, what do they think is relevant to both partnerships in your relationship or partnerships in life? Or what are some stories that they've had, either personal or at work, that really honed in on the fact that a relationship is a relationship and a partnership is a partnership. And there's a ton of crossover in almost the skill sets there. So this is really a webinar bringing in expertise from lots of other people. And then Nick and I are just going to comment on that a little bit ourselves. I'm Kelsey Johnson. I'm the head of marketing at PartnerFleet. We are a white labeled marketplace for websites, and you can also get it embedded in app. I have been a marketer for 10 years, but I have also always been on small teams. And so I'm an accidental partnership pro. I have worked with lots and lots of partners on things like this webinar and worked with lots of other companies. So that's, where I've brought in my expertise here.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. I am Nick Stamboulis, aka the Partnership Guy. I am an account executive here at Partner Portal. Everybody I work with is building these partner programs from the ground up. And one of my favorite things to do is help them go from 0 to 1. I recently started a blog about all things partnerships, PRMs, and everything under the sun. Excited to explore this today. For our session, we've got some rock star takeaways from partner leaders across the globe that Kelsey and I are going to jump into. And so whether you're looking to enhance your partner program or just curious about applying these principles of love to business, it should be a good one. Love to just start off with a little takeaway from both of us before we jump into some of the anecdotes from our leaders. So my partner takeaway is going to be watch or plant the seeds and watch them grow. Any partnership or relationship over time may grow to be significant. And I'm actually going to draw some parallels to my current relationship. So my current relationship started with my best friend from high school dating a girl from the town over. And my best friend's girlfriend's best friend, my current girlfriend, was around, but I never really knew her. She went to our baseball games in high school, and we were friendly with one another, but never really got to know each other too far. But fast forward 4 years, I had moved to Boston and started working at a couple of different startups. She had gone to school down in South Carolina, and our paths never really intersected again until we were planning a beach retreat weekend with some friends. My girlfriend actually reached out to me before the trip, and we started talking. And during that trip, we met in person. We had an amazing time that weekend, and we started talking a little bit more and more. Fast forward a couple of months, we actually started doing this long distance dating thing, which had its ups and downs, but we continued nurturing this relationship over time. And fast forward another 2 years, we've actually been living together for almost 2 years now. But had I dismissed this and not watered or planted these seeds from the very beginning, I don't know where I would be. She's my rock. She's an absolute rock star and pushes me forward all day, every single day.
I love that. I was trying to do a little math of friend, but from over there. But yeah, no, I like that. That's, and I think that that's something, there's a big takeaway for that in partnerships professionally, which is, building that relationship or being open-minded to all opportunities is how you end up finding those ones in the long run that really work out extremely well for the both of you. And so that's that's a really great takeaway there. My story's a little bit shorter. My partner and I met about 10 years ago. We were friends for a couple of years, and we have both grown. I mean, 10 years ago, I was in my late 20s. And so my big takeaway for, sort of partnerships in life and partnerships professionally is that you're going to change. I'm a completely different person, or a largely different person than I was 10 years ago. And the way that my partner and I have continued to stay close and work on our relationship is by understanding that, the same things that I brought to the table and the same ways that I acted about things and the same things that I needed are different now than they were at the time. And I think that really parallels to partnerships as well, because you might have a great partner who you talk about it and you are looking for exactly the same thing, right? And then in 6 months, the goals of either of your company or both of them change. And you need to sort of understand that you still have to continue to work together on that partnership and modify it to make sure that it still works for the two of you, because over time things just change. They always do. And so those are our stories. We are going to now dive into what the experts had to say.
Awesome. So our first takeaway from an expert is from Jessie Shipman. She is the CEO and one of the co-founders over at Fluency. Her takeaway is a partnership is a partnership. Learn from your personal life.
I love Jessie's quote because this really kicks us off. And she is, well known on LinkedIn for having a very public being public about her relationship in a very beneficial way. What she said is, when she first started in partnerships, the only context that she had was her personal partnership, her marriage. At that point, they'd been married for over a decade and had done a lot of growing together. She had learned over the years that if she led with curiosity, empathy, and assuming positive intent, that she was much more likely to resolve conflict quicker, find joy in the simple things, and create a positive environment to live in. She translated that into her business partnerships and found out pretty quickly that those principles were also true there. They got to trust and then productivity so much faster when she applied them. And I absolutely love this. One of the coolest things about partnerships is that you can pull so much experience from your personal life. You don't necessarily get to do that when you go into development or sales. I'm sure you do in certain ways, but you can kind of, if you've had a partnership, and everybody's had partnerships, whether it's with family or friends or anyone, you can pull that experience into your professional business.
Totally. What a great way to kick things off. So our next takeaway comes from Sean Lee over at Flip CX. And his takeaway is to nurture all partnerships, no matter the size. Any might grow to be significant.
He says, like relationships, partnerships involve nurturing and acting on both strong links and weak links. Not every partnership is strategic and deep from the start, but each partner may present valuable windows to engage that could make the relationship closer, and you should act accordingly. I feel like this is the same takeaway as yours, Nick, right?
Yeah, definitely spot on. Cool. Our next quote or takeaway is going to come from Rob over at Superglue. So his takeaway is communication is key for all relationships, and I definitely echo that one as well.
Yeah. Sort of spoiler for the next few slides. Communication was the biggest theme when we reached out to everyone. Rob says, for any partnership to stand the test of time, be it in business or romance, it's crucial to keep the lines of communication strong and clear from day one and beyond. I'm glad that we're going through some more of these communication tips as well. I think that there is this element of saying that communication is important is very easy to do. And it almost even feels like kind of very, very important, but also slightly vague. And then as soon as you actually have to keep the lines of communication strong and clear, as Rob says, it's hard. It's hard to do, isn't it? It's hard to do in your personal life. It's hard to do when you are balancing lots of partners at work. It's hard to do if part of that communication is negative. That's one of the biggest things that I've struggled with, both professionally and in my personal relationship, is how do you keep the lines of communication strong when there's negative feedback, or when there's negative results, or when something happened that you have to sort of parse through? It's one thing that I think that everybody needs to keep top of mind, because as soon as you let it slip, then everything's by the wayside.
100%. Our next takeaway comes from Susan Powell over at Blue Ridge Networks. So sticking along the lines, the theme of communication, her takeaway is open and honest communication and active listening.
She says, success of any close relationship depends on effective communication. Open, honest, and active listening communication sets up a win-win.
I couldn't agree more. Our next takeaway comes from Christy over at Lane London. Her takeaway is making sure that you guys as partners are on the same page.
I love Christy's takeaway. Christy's a close friend of mine and has been in partnerships forever. What she says is she's learned the secret sauce to flourishing partnerships and relationships is simple: being on the same page, diving in wholeheartedly, and embracing understanding and respect. This recipe not only allows each partner to shine individually, but also to move forward together. And hey, it's not just about weathering the storm side by side, but about crafting bridges to sail over them. For a few of the respondents that we talked to and we asked for examples from, they gave us actually specific examples from their lives, like you and I contributed, Nick. And Christy was one of those. Christy is now at Lane London, but at the time she was working at MailChimp, and she's got a story from that. She says, we were building out our agency partnerships, and I was focused on providing more internalized partnerships. I understood that the way business is done outside of the States requires some localized expertise, and they needed champions. Enter the agency partners. By far my favorites, she said. By far my favorite partnership was with a company called Think3. We worked with them to build out and manage ongoing development on integrations in the early days of MailChimp's e-commerce API and Mandrill products. Not only did they do an amazing job on the integration, but they also vouched for and made introductions to our team with other major German and European potential partners and customers, speaking engagements, etc. This elevated our brand internationally and provided access that we would not have had prior. Think3 still works with MailChimp, but has also grown significantly over the last years. We are still in contact and looking for new ways to work together. Without the alignment in goals and values, keeping each other in the loop, good or bad, and supporting each other in our joint individual initiatives, we would not have been nearly as successful. Now, I think there's a huge story here about international partnerships in general. My brother, funnily enough, works for a company called Pax8. And he, a couple of years ago, moved over to Europe to set up a sales department for their Europe. They had acquired a company in Europe. And one thing that he told me is it was so hard to communicate with Europeans when he first got over there. They valued different things. They had different goals. They respected people who were closer by than somebody who had just come in from the United States, which I'm sure would be true if somebody came over from Europe as well. And he really struggled. And I think that partnerships are one of the absolute best way to truly understand an external source, right? Something that is actually foreign to you, literally. A way to get in the door is to forge a partnership and a relationship, and be able to expand together. And in this example with Think3 and MailChimp, both of them benefited from that partnership and that relationship. And what it came down to was keeping each other in the loop, communication, being on the same page, and having joint goals and working together on those goals. And I just love that story from Christy.
Yeah, that's a great one. And the other thing too, Kelsey, I think she was mentioning this, is these things don't happen overnight either. It takes time. You have to plant the seeds, you have to water them, you have to continue to nurture these relationships. And over time, they can develop into something amazing. But it starts with making sure you guys are on the same page and being consistent and open with that communication along the way.
Yeah, and that strong partnership that you start can continue to be beneficial forever, which I just love that about partnerships.
Our next takeaway comes from Kenny Brown over at PartnerFleet. His takeaway was to make sure you learn each other's languages.
Kenny, our CEO over here, one of my favorites. He had a couple of stories for examples of learn each other's languages from his personal life. He says, early on in my marriage, we spoke different languages. There were words that to her had a negative connotation, and there were words that to him had a negative connotation and to her had a positive connotation. And that he's talking about his wife in this. For example, the word potential. For Kenny, potential meant laziness. And for his wife, potential meant opportunity. And they struggled when having a conversation about this word, using this word potential, because they weren't really bringing the same connotation to this word when they had these conversations. And so his takeaway is you need to learn the languages of your partners. Now, we were just talking about foreign languages, obviously, that can be a little difficult. I don't know if you necessarily need to learn German if you're working with a German partner, as long as you both do speak the same language. But understanding connotations can be one of the biggest hindrances in that effective communication, right? And being open-minded to the way that somebody else perceives that word or that language, or that choice of words, is the way that you overcome that. You don't want to just dig your heels in and say my way is right. You have to understand, okay, when they say this is what they mean in my head, even though it's the same word and it means something different to me. Kenny also has another example from his son. He says his son, who he counts as a partner since he gets a Valentine's from Kenny every single year, his son has autism. And he had to be very clear. He has to be very clear with the expectations that he's setting for his son. So one example of that is that he has to say things like, here's how things are now, but things might change. If things change, let me know what you need in that situation. And I think that is one of the most wonderful examples of how to create effective communication with people, because, in the example of people communicating with each other who don't have autism, we take a lot of leaps in terms of our understanding. Like, I think they're going to assume X, Y, and Z. They're going to assume that if things change, that they can let me know if that's a problem. But that's not always the case, especially with somebody that you're working with virtually or somebody that you're trying to build a relationship with. And so I love breaking that down to, let the person know exactly what's going on and let them know that it's okay with you, that if things are upsetting for them or they need something new in that partnership, they can let you know.
Those are some great stories, Kelsey. Our next takeaway comes from Blake Williams from Amp Factor. His takeaway is to understand everyone's effort, expectations, and outcome goals.
Blake says, whether in personal or professional relationships, always be curious about 3 things. 1, the specific role that they want to play. 2, the outcome that they expect or desire. And 3, the level of effort that they want to put into any collaborative effort in order to drive that outcome. So he's got a great example from his personal life, which is whether it's a multifamily beach trip or a partnership, everyone has a predetermined outcome that they want to get, how much effort they're willing to expend to get it, and the role they play in making it happen. So think about if you're going to the beach and you want to get in the water, you need to let everyone know there needs to be somebody on the beach who's willing to sit with everybody's stuff so that you can get into the water. Or if you want to go out to a nice dinner on the beach as well, you need to figure out how to go to the beach and then shower and change if you want to, or what are those expectations? How much are you willing to spend at that dinner on the beach? And take a look at what is everybody else looking to get out of this, not just what am I looking to get out of this, and also how much work are they willing to put in to get that outcome versus how much work I'm willing to put in to get that outcome.
For sure. Our next takeaway comes from James Sullivan from 17 Tech. His takeaway is that every party in a partnership should come out better because of the partnership.
I love this. It's true
Me too.
of personal relationships and partnerships. James says, business partnerships need constant check-ins, nurturing, and goal realignment. You need to go into it knowing it's a 2-way relationship, and after the partnership, both parties should come out better. Otherwise, it was not the right partnership. I think about this sort of on the negative side, and not to drive this in a negative direction. That's certainly the worst thing that marketers should do. But to me, this means walking away from a partnership that's not going to mutually benefit everybody. And that is true both in your personal relationships and also at work. You and the other person need to be getting better and getting benefits from it. And if that's not the case, it's not necessarily the fault of either of you. It's just the fault of the partnership. It's not a good fit.
Yeah, that's a good point to drive home. Our next takeaway comes from Aurea Clement from integration.app. His takeaway is the sum of a partnership should be greater than its parts.
I like that as well. Effective partnerships, he says, mirror a well-coded program. Each part functions independently, but integrates seamlessly for a greater purpose. Value and trust for all the stakeholders involved.
Nice. Our next takeaway comes from Ari Haas over at Digi. His takeaway is, in partnerships, a serious commitment is required. And I mean, that's 100% true, whether it's in business or in an actual loving relationship. That commitment from both parties is 100% needed and required.
Yeah, I think this is one that we maybe assume. Everybody assumes, but I like that he called it out. Everybody involved needs to be committed to making this happen. And it's certainly true of your romantic partnerships, but I think it's also true for professional partnerships. Ari says, everyone needs to be invested, respectful, and trust each other. Both parties need to be seriously committed, see the value each one brings, and keep your promises. It's a short quote, but it packs a lot of punches there.
Yeah, it certainly does. Our next takeaway is from Sam, who's also at Digi. Her takeaway is that in love and partnerships, you must share values and goals.
She says both types of partnerships should center around shared values and goals. This will set the foundation and ensure continuous alignment.
Nice. Next takeaway comes from rock star Sam from Advisory. Her takeaway is short and sweet. Details matter.
Yeah, and obviously we all know Sam for being publicly a partnership with Jason Yarborough and having a podcast together, Friends with Benefits. Everybody go check it out. It's a great podcast. And also, both of them are partnership bosses. And so, she had a really great takeaway, and she's got a story coming out of that as well. Sam says, details matter. They matter in your friendships, marriage, and partnerships. Details in the form of A, what does success look like to you as an individual and together? B, how can I support your growth? And here's how I need you to support mine. And C, what does failure look like to you? And how can I best support you when you need it? And then D, how do you prefer to be communicated with? I absolutely love this. This is another thing where, we talk about communication is important, but the details of the communication are really, where it's at and how you dig into creating that good communication. Sam says, at the end of the day, good relationships are the product of outstanding communication. We often stay on the surface, and that's not where the magic is. You got to dig in deep.
Nice. Our next takeaway comes from Sal over at Fundraise Up. Another short and sweet one. Partnership equals friendship.
I like this. Sal says, we call it the partnerships team because we can't call it the friendships team. But that's what we should be doing, cultivating friendships. That implies respect, doing right by them, and expecting the same. An example of that is Sal scuba dives with one of his partners, and he gets parenting advice from another. While metrics are important, the relationships developed are what make partnerships special and really help the metrics fall into place. And I think Sal Fundraise Up is a customer of PartnerFleet's, and Sal is, I think, one of the best communicators and one of the best relationship builders as well. We love working with him.
Nice. Next takeaway comes from Mike Stoker over at Lane London. His takeaway is treat absolutely everyone with respect. And I definitely echo that myself.
Mike's actually at CallRail. That's a little bit of a typo on that slide. And Mike's got a little bit of a different story. And this is kind of just a general relationship building story across the board. And I really love Mike's story. He says, my grandpa raised me. He was an entrepreneur and a business owner and always told me this: treat everyone with respect. It could be a brand new entry level SDR or BDR all the way through to the CEO. He always said that you never know when that person will grow in their career and be your buyer, partner, or contact. As a story, he had a mentor when he worked at Marketo named Robin. Robin helped him in his career by pushing him outside of his comfort boundaries. He encouraged Mike to go above and beyond to create and set up a speaker series of B2C marketers to come to Marketo so their teams could better learn how to meet their needs. This forced Mike to work cross-functionally, raise his visibility from within the company, and it benefited the sales, marketing, and partnerships teams. It was uncomfortable at first, but it was a great learning experience, and that's helped him learn and grow in his career. And I absolutely love that story because this to me leads into the like nurture and grow concept, right? First of all, I think you should just treat everybody's a person, so treat them with respect anyway. But I feel like sometimes we can get caught up in what is the person that can do the most for me right now. And that's not really a great way to build a relationship. I also think about personal relationships. A lot of people will be looking for somebody that ticks all of their boxes, right? Who's already a perfect, completed version, of what this person is looking for. And that's not how life works. That's not how partnerships work. That's not how love works. That's not how relationships work. And so to me, it's not only treat every person at every level that you're working with respect. but treat every element of that person with respect. Understand that a person is a sum of their parts, and that to work with them or to love them or to have a close friendship with them, you just take them as they are.
100%. I can actually think of some times in my own life, Kelsey, where I got into a manager role and I was training reps, and I could see some of these reps were going to be kicking my butt in a couple of years. Maybe I'd said a few choice words to them, and fast forward, they have already their careers have already surpassed my own, and I'm looking up to them, and maybe I should have said some of the things that I did, and I was able to mend a lot of those relationships. But you never know where people are going to end up. We're always growing. We're always on a path forward. And, to Mike's point, it's best to treat everybody with respect.
Absolutely. An example of that that is sort of personal for me is that my partner and I actually aren't Valentine's Day people that much. I'm not a huge Valentine's Day person, just in terms of going out and doing something special on the day. My partner is even less so. And I think that he would not be super stoked for me to be doing a Valentine's Day webinar, but he respects me and respects my job, and, is definitely, takes me as I am and is happy to support me in doing that. I'm the dark horse of the partnerships Valentine's Day webinar host.
So our next takeaway comes from Antonio over at Megaport. He's an awesome LinkedIn influencer, rock star, talks about everything partnerships. And his takeaway is partnerships are like a team sport.
He says there are parallels between organized team sports and partnerships. At its very core, the relationship that each player has on a field or court is in a very basic sense a partnership. Yes, technically, but the definition of partnership is not exactly that. There's no written agreement, or it's not part of different organizations or anything in sports. But he says the way that things work should be similar. You have to share the ball, you have to assist, you have to help each other, and you have to work together. You have to communicate, you have to have the same goal and target, etc. Let's take, for example, soccer. You can't win alone. You need your teammates to do their job, fill a gap, etc. You do a role, you solve one problem, but in order to score and win, you need the other teammates to do their role too. Each brings a different skill set, from a goalkeeper to a forward. And just like in business, you can't do it all. You might be very good at one thing, but very bad at another. And when a customer needs a problem solved, you'll need partners to help you fill the gaps that you can't. And just like in partnerships, in team sports, if you win, your teammates win. If you lose, you both lose. You're in it together. The more chemistry you develop, the better it gets. You get better at communication. You get better at having each other's back, at anticipating moves, at knowing your teammate will be in a specific place without the need to look at or hear them. So the personal relationships that you build in team sports very closely resemble the relationships and cadence you need to develop in partnerships. Are you a sports player, Nick?
I grew up playing baseball, and I was an avid swimmer. So especially on baseball, you can't do all the positions by yourself. You need a team to be able to back you guys up and, win together as a team or lose together as a team. You're doing it in conjunction with everyone.
I love it.
Our next takeaway comes from Mike Nardella, who is the CEO of Relevise. His takeaway is it can take time to find the perfect match.
He says, business partnerships and romantic partnerships are like socks and shoes. Ideally, they complement each other perfectly, but occasionally you find yourself wondering why one smells a bit off and the other keeps tripping you up. And just like footwear, sometimes you have to try out a few before you find the perfect match. An important difference, however, is while we encourage our clients to cultivate many business partnerships at once, that sort of thing won't get you very far with romantic partnerships. Very true, especially monogamous partnerships.
100%. I think this is our final takeaway. This is from Eddie Patch, who is the CEO of PartnerPortal.io. His takeaway was to make sure that you celebrate the wins together.
Eddie says business and romantic partnerships are both built on the foundation of trust, communication, and a shared vision for the future. Whether you're negotiating a deal or deciding on dinner, the key to success lies in understanding each other's needs, compromising gracefully, and always remembering to celebrate the wins, big or small, together. I like that.
Nice. That's a good one.
What are your favorite takeaways from this, from these quotes, Nick?
Mine is at the top here. It was a very common theme throughout. It seems like this struck a chord with a lot of people, but communication is certainly key. You got to get on the right page, have open, honest, and transparent conversations. Even if you're having those hard conversations, you need to have them. And I think having those difficult conversations can lead to more meaningful and lasting relationships down the road. But if you table those or bottle them up inside, you're probably not going to be a very happy camper.
My favorite one was be respectful without judgment. No matter who it is, treat them with respect. And I think that respect also ties into communication and understanding that everyone should benefit and when to really walk away. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Nick. This has been a really fun Valentine's Day treat. Get some expert relationship advice and partnership advice, and I'll certainly be taking a lot of it away with me.
Yeah, all good stuff. Thank you so much for having me, Kelsey. This is awesome.